Demons of mirrors. Don't look in old mirrors. Somewhere in the mid-80s, during the Soviet time, I met Father Mikhailo Kobla, a priest who was the secretary of the Chernivtsi diocese. Or rather, he came to my house and asked me to sing him some of my own songs. At that time, I had already performed with the Jewish bard Emil Krupnik at various tourist centers. So, Father Mikhailo, who, in addition to being a priest, also had a talent for writing, became interested in my work. I sang him one of my songs about Kornabil. He was impressed and asked me where I got it from. I answered that I just wrote it. And he added, no, it came from God. The word, God, in his mouth for the first time sounded so life-giving to me that it penetrated my heart. Do you want to sing in the church choir? I heard him ask. I don't know, I replied. It will enrich you in poetry and singing, you won't regret it. The next Saturday, Father Mikhailo was waiting for me near St. Nicholas Church on Ruska Street from the word Rus. We went up to the choir, and Father Mikhailo recommended me to Father Vasil Zapotikny, the regent of the bishop's choir. At that time, only 2 or 3 churches in Chernivtsi were holding services. On Ruska Street there was the Church of St. Nicholas, and on Starozhenetska Street there was the Church of the Archangel Michael. And I think there was a church somewhere in Sadhora. Everything was mysterious and enigmatic to me. Father Vasil assigned me to the second base, and I took my place on the pew. There were about 40 singers in the choir. The choir was mixed, both men and women of different ages. There were young girls. Of course, I was drawn to communicate with young people. I regularly went to rehearsals during the week, and on Saturday nights and Sundays to sing at the service. I was interested in what young people were doing here. Why do they not have fun on weekends, but give their lives to church sadness and restriction? This is how I imagined church religious life back then. One day I decided to approach a young soprano singer and get to know her. She reacted sincerely and cordially. I remember asking her a question. How did she become a believer? What is her path to God and why is she here? And this is what she told me. What I heard from the chorister singer did not cause me to doubt. After all, this is a church. And there was a confirmation, which I will tell you about at the end. I am 24 years old, Alina began. I am not married. My upbringing was atheistic, but I was very inclined to mysticism, to fantasy. I knew a little Romanian, and I came across a Romanian magazine that described how to read mirrors to see your future. This was supposed to be done on the feast of St. Andrew I called, and always in front of an old mirror. My aunt, who lived in the center of Chernivtsi, in a 3 cubic meter apartment, had just such an old mirror. I decided to look into my future. I had to do everything strictly according to the ritual. First of all, I had to wait for the feast of St. Andrew. I asked my aunt to let me spend the night at her apartment, and I took the room with the old mirror. About 15 minutes before midnight, I undressed. I stood naked in front of an old mirror decorated with beautiful carvings. The mirror was oval, 1.5 meters, and you could see yourself in full growth. And you could move it around the room. So I was naked, sat down in front of it, and surrounded myself with 12 church candles, which I lit. The wall clock struck midnight. The lights were off. I looked at myself in the mirror. The candles were burning around me. I waited and shivered. But nothing much happened. At first, I was somehow tense, but after 20 minutes of waiting, I started to think about stopping this guessing. My enthusiasm dropped. There was some disappointment. But just as I was about to get up and turn on the light, I saw that the glass of the mirror began to stir, as clear water in still lake stirs from the breeze, and a slight ripple appears. It tensed me up, and I looked into the depths of the mirror. And then the outlines of a man in long clothes began to appear. The image became more and more prominent, and I smoothed out a military man in a uniform with shoots, a colonel, I think. I opened my mouth, and my heart started to race. The soldier was walking down the road from a distance, as if looking at me. I was looking through the window at him. He was getting closer. I could see his manly posture, his noble features. He looked friendly and walked. But in a minute everything began to change in him. First of all, he began to hunch over. Then the proportions changed. His face became sterner. His eyes became angrier. His legs became bent, and I saw that he was not walking with boots on, as before, but on his hooves. In a few minutes, he was no longer a man, not a soldier. It was an unclean man with horns, standing on the other side of the mirror, looking at me with hatred with coal-red eyes, and I looked at him. My hair stood on end. Not only on my head, but also on my arms. In the next moment, the hoof of the unclean came out of the mirror, and the hoof pushed me in the chest. I fell off the chair and lost consciousness. I was silent and listened to Alina. I could not help but believe what Alina was saying. Everything I heard was spinning before my eyes. I could feel how difficult it was for her to relive it, what she was telling me. Her lips were trembling, and I felt a chill from what I heard. I woke up in the intensive care unit, Alina continued. I was weak, unable to nod my head. I understood everything, but I couldn't move. It took me a week to get out of bed a little bit. Doctors told me that I was in a deep coma for 10 days. No one understood what was wrong with me or why it happened to me. I decided not to talk about the evil one and fortune-telling, because I risked ending up in a psychiatric hospital forever. And in the papers, the doctors wrote that I was stressed after being separated from my beloved. How could I not go to church after that, not come to faith? I shook my head at her words and said, "You told me such a story, I can't believe it." "Can't you believe it?" And with her hand she reached for the headscarf that girls and women in the church usually wore to cover their heads. She abruptly tore the headscarf off her head, and strands of gray-white hair, which I had only seen on old village women, fell down. I grabbed my head in surprise and could only say in a choked voice, "I'm sorry, Alina." "You know," she said, "after that incident, besides gray hair, I have another mark. I can't show you, of course, but you can take my word for it." "What is it?" I asked. "I have a mark on my chest from an unclean hoof, as if from hot iron. I was in Pochaev with the shrewd elder Dmitri, the regent. He said that it was the unclean one who left his mark on you. So, beware, go to the church all the time and partake of the holy mysteries of Christ, so that he, the unclean one, does not come again and take you away. Frequent communion will make you invisible to that demon." For a long time I remembered the fate of the singer from the choir. And I was grateful for her frankness, because those were my first steps into the church, and what I heard strengthened my faith. Later, I became interested in the mystery of ancient mirrors and found scientific evidence of the extraordinary and even dangerous nature of mirrors. This is primarily the research of academician Kozyrev. It may be controversial, but ancient Ukrainian beliefs claim that mirrors can accumulate the energy of people who look into them. So, the older the mirror, the more different energy is accumulated in it, including negative energy. And the accumulated energy seems to be transmitted within the mirror. One of the obvious signs of this phenomenon is a distinct noticeable eye fatigue when you look in the mirror for a long time. It is believed that mirrors are not only able to memorize what they see, but also to read the thoughts and mood of the people who look at them. Therefore, according to the belief, one should not keep old mirrors that have witnessed crimes or other tragic events, as they are able to repeat what they have seen in the fate of their new owners. For this reason, our ancestors did not recommend leaving old mirrors of its former owners in the newly purchased house. Or bring your own from the old house to the new one. A mirror can remember events. It can let the deceased in. It can age you or rejuvenate you. It is an energy storage device. In magical practices, a mirror is used as a portal between worlds. In its ability to reflect a person and the surrounding reality, the mirror is steadily correlated with consciousness, thinking, acting as a tool of self-knowledge and reflection of the universe. The concept of reflection brings thought and mirror closer together. Imagination as the creation of images of the world is also personified in the mirror. The reflection of a person in a mirror was considered by some peoples to be a container of the soul. For this reason, people who do not reflect themselves in a mirror were considered cursed, having sold their souls to the devil. Mirrors remember all the events that took place in front of them. Ancient mirrors with a rich history hold many memories. People who spend a lot of time in front of a mirror, and especially if they stare at it for a long time, begin to feel tired and have memory loss. Experimenters have proven that mirrors accumulate human energy, acting as energy vampires. The process of energy withdrawal takes about 3 minutes. Therefore, the victims are mainly those who like to admire their reflection for a long time. But that's not the worst part. It turned out that those who often look in the mirror age much faster. All of this can be questioned, you can disbelieve it. But academician Kozarev's research will dispel doubts to some extent. Back in the early 90s, at the rise of democracy, research into the unique phenomena of mirrors began at the Institute of Experimental Medicine of the Siberian branch of the USSR Academy of Sciences. It went like this. A volunteer was placed in the focus of a 3-meter mirror spiral. The person would spend several hours there, and amazing phenomena would begin to occur. The subjects talked about leaving their own bodies. And they mentioned the real facts that happened in the neighboring rooms at that very time. They could not have seen them directly or even guessed at them. In addition, the volunteers were immersed in pictures of the past and the near future. They accurately predicted the events of the next few hours, some of them exhibiting the effect of telekinesis. Nikolai Kozyrev himself believed that the density of time changes in the focus of his mirrors. That's where these amazing effects come from. The inventor considered time to be a special kind of energy. Therefore, like any energy, it can be accumulated, densified and liquefied, and generally controlled. It seemed that Soviet scientists had found a gold mine. Further developments promised great prospects. Well, this revolutionary invention could have changed the world. If only more effort had been put into its study. But then strange things happened. Without any tragedy or repression, somehow all the work was slowly curtailed. Some kind of danger to the subjects was mentioned somewhere in passing, but somehow implicitly, as if between business. As a result, all work on Kozarev's mirrors did not progress further. Today, few people know about them. That's how they are, strange mirrors. But from the point of view of the salvation of our souls, if a person trusts in God and has Christ as his most valuable treasure in his heart, then no mirrors, old or new, can harm him. And looking at oneself in a mirror to keep oneself neat is neither harmful nor a sin. Everything is possible for us, but nothing should possess us. Amen.